Everybody, it is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports. Today, I'm David Wilson, joined by my partner in crime here every Wednesday. You can see us from now moving forward. Calvin White, good buddy of mine. Calvin, happy Wednesday. The last day of the work week for you here on Main Street Sports today for the rest of the week. I know you're happy about that. How's your week going so far? And how was your Tuesday show yesterday with Wade on Top 5 Tuesday?
It's been going good so far. Been trying to acquire all of the mini football rosters we have to acquire before the start of the season. Had a really good show with Wade yesterday. We had really good talks with Zach Smith from the Waco Herald Tribune. Kind of previewed some Big 12 football. Big 12 football. Today we're going to talk Big 10 football. So looking forward to a really good show today.
Right, yeah, it's getting that time of year, Calvin. Obviously, high school football starts 2 weeks, opening kickoff from tomorrow. I'm looking forward to having Beach and Green Hill, I believe, on the Thursday night edition of that. Little Friday night rivals game of the week on a Thursday in Wilson County. Really looking forward to that one. Really looking forward to this show as well. Calvin mentioned yesterday talking a little Big 12 football. We'll talk a little Big 10 football here in our first segment here, just shortly, about 15 minutes away. 12:20, we'll have Joe Rexrode of The Athletic joining us. Talk a little Big 10 football, a lot of storylines to get into. Obviously, your reigning, defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes are going to be on that list. Obviously, Penn State as well and Indiana. Both teams that made runs to the college football playoff last year. We'll talk all things Big 10 with Joe. Also looking forward to having Heather Williams on in the second hour for our weekly segment with her around 3:20. Looking forward to talking a little NASCAR. I know that's Calvin's favorite topic of the week when we talk a little NASCAR. We'll talk Iowa, William Byron getting it done the second time this year, going to victory lane. His first win since the Daytona 500. So the Hendry Motorsports star getting in victory lane with 3 races to go before the playoffs. The NASCAR schedule goes to Watkins Glen, New York this weekend. A little road course action coming up on the schedule. Looking forward to talking to Heather about that. And also, Heather was a part of the very rain-soaked MLB Speedway Classic at Bristol Motor Speedway this past Saturday and Sunday. Looking forward to getting her perspective on a really cool event that had a lot of butts in the seats on Saturday night. Unfortunately, with the weather coming through East Tennessee, that was not able to get finalized and finished on Saturday evening, transferred over into Sunday. But looking forward to talking to Heather, as we always do here on Wednesdays, talking a little NASCAR and, of course, a little baseball. Her Kansas City Royals are still in the hunt. Calvin and I's Braves, not so much. We'll have a little Braves chatter here at 2:45 as we go this day in Braves history. And we also have the addition of the grab bag coming at 3 o'clock. We'll dive into stuff from preps to pros, little NFL training camp stuff going in there. A lot of news in the NFL as preseason action gets underway on Friday, I believe, and the rest of this weekend. Also talking a little golf. Calvin this weekend is going to be taking his trips to Memphis to see the FedEx playoffs get started out there in West Tennessee. So looking forward to having all those things happen here on this Wild and Wacky Wednesday. And in the final segment of the day, we'll dive into the wildest and the wackiest stories from across the globe. Calvin has carefully and articulately picked those topics out, and I'm sure he's excited. Look at his face. He's thrilled. He's absolutely thrilled to have it on Wild and Wacky Wednesday. So great show for you guys on ahead. I think we can get started, Mark, Calvin, with last night's scores and results on the rundown.
This is the rundown.
Last night's scores across Major League Baseball for those of us here tied to this show. Wade's Astros picked up their second win and won the series down in Miami against the Marlins, 7-3 final right there. Jose Altuve and Yainer Diaz with home runs in there for the Astros as they take the series and beat a really good Marlins team that's made some noise. They swept the Yankees this past weekend for the first time in franchise history. So the Marlins making a run, but the Astros have taken care of business the first 2 games of that series. And taking care of business is the Milwaukee Brewers. They dispatched of Calvin, Mo, and my Atlanta Braves last night 7-2. The Brewers hold the best record in Major League Baseball. They have taken that series, and they'll go for the sweep tonight against the Braves down at Truist Park in Atlanta. Last night, the Sounds opened a 6-game road trip against the Jacksonville not road trip, sorry. They opened up a 6 a.m. homestand, against the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp last night, and the Jumbo Shrimp take that one 6-2. They had a 6-run fifth inning to defeat the Sounds last night at First Horizon Park. In the W, the New York Liberty 85-76 victors over the Dallas Wings. The Chicago Sky take down the Washington Mystics 78-64. The LA Sparks edge out the Indiana Fever 100-91. Phoenix Mercury 82-66 victors over the Connecticut Sun, and the Minnesota Lynx and the Phoenix Collier, they defeat the Seattle Storm 91-87. That's last night's results in the W.
Looking at tonight's schedule, not a whole lot going on, but the Astros are at the Marlins. First pitch for that game will be at 3:40 p.m. The Brewers are at the Braves at 6:15 p.m. You can catch that game on FS1. In a little minor league baseball action, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp are at the Sounds at 6:35. Then the lone WNBA game of the night, the Las Vegas Aces are at the Golden State Valkyries at 9 p.m. You can catch that game on NBA TV. Ladies and gentlemen, those were your scores. That was your schedule, and that concludes today's rundown.
Real quickly, before we get into our top story, really excited about that Jumbo Shrimp and Sounds game tonight. It's winning Wednesday. Feel free to head down to the ballpark if the Sounds win tonight. All fans get to run the bases. Also, Butch McCord, Jersey night. The Sounds do a great job honoring the past legacies of Nashville and baseball here, whether it's the Negro Leagues. So go down to First Horizon Park. The weather is beautiful outside right now. Enjoy some Sounds versus Jumbo Shrimp, and hopefully you get to run the bases with the Sounds victory. Our top story is brought to you by the fine folks over at Piggly Wiggly and Mealy's Mill in Columbia. They serve lunch daily from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10 at their cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Mealy's Mill in Columbia. Presenting to you our top story, and for those of you that are fantasy football fanatics like I and like to tune in to Scott Hansen on the NFL Red Zone. It's got an own channel for it, Calvin. 714 for those who have Comcast like I. You will be seeing the NFL Red Zone and hopefully Scott Hansen on a new station this fall. ESPN is acquiring the NFL Network and other of its media assets, which include the popular Red Zone channel, and a deal that will see the NFL get a 10% equity stake in all the sports network. This was announced last night. Roger Goodell came on ESPN as well to talk about the news. ESPN will also acquire the NFL's fantasy product and merge it into its existing platform, making ESPN Fantasy Football the official game of the NFL. In a separate deal, the NFL will also agree to license the ESPN other NFL content and intellectual property, and it will also appear on the NFL Network and its other assets. The NFL Network will be owned and operated by ESPN, which will control the network's linear and digital rights. The NFL will be integrated into the ESPN's upcoming direct-to-consumer streaming product, and it will continue to be available on traditional pay TV providers. Obviously, Calvin, this is big news for those of us that love football. It's the most popular sport in the United States when it comes to viewership. It seems like they own every single day of the week. Not only is there Sunday football all throughout the day, we have Monday Night Football. We have Amazon Prime on Thursdays. It seems like the last couple of years, the NFL continued to expand its footprint and its digital network, and that continues right here with ESPN, or I guess acquiring a big stake of the NFL Network.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting thing to me is, with the NFL Network now being owned by ESPN, is the NFL, obviously because the NFL owns the NFL Network, is the NFL going to have a say in, what ESPN does and doesn't put on their network about the NFL? If there's something that the NFL might not want out there, then we're probably going to have to get that other places that aren't ESPN. But, people got used to the Red Zone being its own thing for so long, and now that schedule is going to be over there on ESPN. Just going to be a little shake-up and, different way people can consume their mass content of football that they love to consume.
And Calvin, I'll be honest with you, ESPN has kind of dwindled down the totem pole, the leaderboard, whatever analogy you want to say. of people's top ranked shows and channels to watch. Even I remember growing up, you could not have ESPN on, whether it's Sports Center, Baseball Tonight, all the kind of shows and platforms that they had on the network. That has kind of dwindled down. Obviously, they are an entity now with Disney. So, ESPN used to be the only channel that if you love sports that you would watch, and that has now since changed. Obviously, the NFL Red Zone was first commercial-free football. I think that's what made it so appealing to not only those of us that love football, but us fantasy viewers as well. You got to see every score from every game commercial free from 12 o'clock to the last late game in the window around 6 p.m. in the evening. So that was 6 hours commercial free football with Scott Hanson. Is that look going to change now that it goes to ESPN? Obviously, you make money as a TV network and program off commercials. And not having that where NFL Network had the Red Zone as its own separate channel. That's one of my first questions. And then secondly, Scott Hanson's a gem. He's a pro at that. He's been doing it since its origination when the idea first started at the NFL Network. I want him to be a part of that. He's what makes the Red Zone so great. His personality, his knowledge of not only football but fantasy, what viewers are looking for. So hopefully that can continue. I would love to ask you. I know you probably play a little fantasy football. Would you say that the Red Zone is your go-to Sunday channel when watching football?
Well, actually, I've never actually been a huge red zone watcher. I was more of a score watcher. Um,
Okay.
I wouldn't like physically sit down and watch the games. Like if I had players on my team, I would keep up with the scores and stuff to see how my players were doing. But like you said, I think the only way that they would have let Red Zone move over to ESPN was if they could keep the show the same, kind of how Pat McAfee did with his show whenever they went over to ESPN. He said the only way he would go to ESPN is if he still had full control over his show, minus a couple things like maybe language and that kind of stuff. But, I think that the only way they would have moved it over to ESPN is if they could have kept it the way it is. Because I think that, especially with like if you look at the NBA on TNT moving from Turner to ESPN this year, everybody's big concern was, are they going to break up the cast? Are they going to change how the show's structured and things like that? Because the way the show is structured and the personalities on that show are what make it probably the most popular studio show, not just in basketball, but all of sports. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep the show format the same and keep Scott Hanson as the host.
Right. This is a statement from ESPN Chairman Jimmy Pitaro. By combining these NFL media assets with ESPN's reach and innovation, we're creating a premier destination for football fans. Together, ESPN and NFL are redefining how fans engage with the game anytime and anywhere. This still helps fuel ESPN's digital future, laying the foundation for even more robust offering as we prepare to launch our new direct-to-consumer service. ESPN Flatmorns will also license 3 additional NFL games per season, giving it a total of 28. The NFL Network will continue to show 7 games per season, with some games shifting to NFL Network from ESPN's original schedule. Dates and games have not been announced. According to a joint statement, ESPN will own broad rights to Red Zone, including the trademark, and continue to distribute the channel to pay TV operators. The NFL will continue to own, operate, and produce the Red Zone channel and will keep the rights digitally distributed digitally. So that kind of answers my question right there. Is Scott Hanson going to be a part of it? It seems like that is yes. Finally, just wrapping this up really quickly. This is from the from the NFL office. Today's announcement paves the way for the world's leading sports brand and America's most popular sport to deliver an even more compelling experience for NFL fans in a way that only Disney and ESPN can provide. Commissioner Goodell and the NFL have been built outstanding media assets, and these transactions will add to the consumer choice, provide viewers with even great convenience and quality, and expand the breadth and value proposition of Disney's streaming ecosystem. So NFL merging together, I guess NFL Network rather, merging together with ESPN to kind of just take the ball and run with it, with NFL obviously the most popular sport here in North America. So looking forward to seeing how that operates, and us fantasy users diving into ESPN and NFL Red Zone with Scott Hanson. looking forward to a great show. We mentioned all the stuff that we got coming around the corner. In the next segment, we will be joined by Joe Rexrode at The Athletic, talking a little Big Ten football, as obviously media days are come and gone. It's time for fall camp, and that kicked off last week. We'll talk with Joe about all things in the Big Ten right after this here on Main Street Sports Today.
Got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs. Winning just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need...
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
3-3.
Oh, busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back in. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports. Today I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Looking forward to talking with Joe Rexrode of The Athletic here coming up in a little bit. Talking Big Ten football as we get ready for the college football season to kick off at the end of the month. We've been taking these previews kind of day by day, Calvin. Yesterday you got to talk a little Big 12 football really quickly as we're waiting on Joe to hop in. Talk about what you learned yesterday, maybe questions you got to ask, and then kind of pivot really quickly with your expectations. Obviously, you're going to ask Joe some questions, maybe some thoughts or expectations that you have of the upcoming season in the Big Ten.
Yeah, yesterday, so me and Wade got to talk with Zach Smith from the Waco Herald Tribune. He's the Baylor beat writer down there. We were kind of talking about, how after Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 last year, how that league kind of just became wide open, especially with conference realignment. And then you had so many of those teams that kind of hung out in the middle of the pack all those years that they were finishing runner-up to Texas and Oklahoma and Baylor there for a little bit. So Zach was just kind of talking about how Arizona State could be a team that could make the playoff potentially again this season. He was talking about how Houston could be one of those teams that not necessarily makes the playoffs, but kind of comes out of nowhere and makes a big run and could be a lot better than people are projecting them to be. But as far as the Big Ten goes today, I'll be interested to talk to Joe about if Indiana was just a flash in the pan last year or if they're kind of set up for continued success. I'm a little curious about Michigan too. The big thing last year with them was they didn't have decent quarterback play. Now they've got a 5-star freshman and a transfer in there. So excited to talk a little Big Ten football with Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned yesterday the talk about conference realignment. It seems like there's been an arms race last couple of years to get the best teams in your conference. We saw that with Oklahoma and Texas moving over to the SEC, with teams like USC and Oregon moving over to the Big Ten. I think that's the biggest thing. Is I'd love to ask Joe, and this is a question I have when it comes to the future of the college football playoff. Right, I think right now the SEC is on an 8-team schedule model. And just looking forward to just, talking about how the Big Ten plays non-conference games. And there's just kind of been some dispute right there on the future of the college football playoffs. Obviously, the Big Ten wants the SEC to add more conference games to its schedule. So Joe Rexrode is here. He's joining us now on Main Street Sports Today. Joe, we appreciate you taking some time and joining us here on this Wednesday. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Calvin, go ahead and kick us off.
Joe, yeah, like we were saying before you kind of jumped on here, we were just kind of talking about some top storylines we might want to talk about. But the biggest thing that I'm curious about, Indiana had that really good year last year, made that run to the college football playoff. This upcoming season is probably the most anticipated season in the history of Indiana football. Do you think they were just a flash in the pan last year, or do you think that under Kurt Cignetti, they're kind of set up for continued success?
It's a great question. I think Indiana is going to be good under Kurt Cignetti. I think that, this year, just like last year, I mean, he got Curtis Rourke last year from Ohio. He got Fernando Mendoza from Cal this year. That's a really good transfer quarterback. You look at Kurt Cignetti's record; it's really impressive everywhere he's been. So I mean that definitely matters. So, the question is just, are they going to be playoff level good? I have my doubts about that. Like, I think Indiana's going to have a lot of 8-4 kind of seasons. Now, you get to 9-3 anymore, and you can make the college football playoff. So, and that's going to be the standard now for programs, right? Like, how often are you knocking on the door? How often are you in the tournament? So I think they can get back to the tournament at times. But, that there was a perfect storm a little bit last year at 11-1, and some of that was their schedule. Now, their own scheduling is pretty pathetic, but they kind of lucked out with the Big Ten. Michigan and Washington weren't as good as they were supposed to be. Nebraska wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. And, they kind of – it was, like I said, kind of a perfect storm. But they're going to be good. I have no doubt about that. I mean – you look at this guy's track record, and he is one of those guys who I think gives his teams a schematic advantage. And now off last year, I know they're recruiting. They have investment NIL money because of that has really made a difference for them. So I think they're going to be a solid program now. And look, anybody who knows the history of Indiana football, this is the losingest program of all time. Most losses of all time, worst Big Ten winning percentage of all time. So just to be solid to good on a yearly basis is totally new territory for Indiana.
And then, Michigan last year in their first full season under Sharon Moore after Jim Harbaugh leaves for the NFL again, they finished 8-5 last year. Kind of the big thing with them last year was they didn't have great quarterback play. Now they've got 5-star freshman and Bryce Underwood, and they've got his name escapes me, but the quarterback transfer from Fresno State. Do you think that Michigan can kind of get back to national championship level good?
No, and especially not this year, especially when you think about what they lost up front on defense too. I mean, that's where that was still an elite, that was a championship level defense last year. And that includes, Will Johnson, a cornerback who was hurt a lot of the year, but when he played especially, they were a really loaded defense. And so you're saying about it, those guys, you're saying about it, your star tight end. So I don't think Michigan is a national championship level team. I think Michigan, a 9-3 kind of year and a playoff spot, again, that's sort of like, I think that's certainly possible, but you're talking about the worst passing offense in college football. And like you said, Bryce Underwood, huge recruit, huge flip from LSU to get him to come to Ann Arbor. And for anybody who doesn't know the story, it's like a billionaire or a woman who went to Michigan, her husband went to Illinois, but he's like a multi-billionaire. And they went, she was like, you know what, we need to go pair up with Dave Portnoy and buy this quarterback, and so they did. But, I mean, look, I think he's going to be good. I think it's asking a little bit much of him as a true freshman to just come in and, transform everything. So I think they might be a year away from getting back, close to the top.
Joe REXRODE from The Athletic joining us here on Main Street Sports today. Joe, I kind of prefaced with this question before you jumped in. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk this offseason. Obviously, the college football playoff is here to stay. It worked beautifully last year. Got some drama, got some parity. But there's been a lot of talk about the Big Ten and the SEC. Obviously, their conference schedule models are different from one another. The Big Ten kind of digging its foot in the ground on that. The SEC needs to continue to add more conference games to its schedule. Kind of give me your thoughts about that. Obviously, for those of us who are probably not as tuned in as you, why is this such a big deal to the Big Ten for the SEC to continue to add games to its schedule?
Oh, hello, guys. Sorry, I lost you there. You got me?
You got it? You got us, Joe?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah. Let me see if I can. Yeah. So I got the gist of your question. I mean, first of all, the Big Ten plan for a playoff, the auto bid plan is absolutely idiotic. So, I think that's not going to happen because the SEC has opposed it. Again, for people who don't know, that's 4 auto bids for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12. It's a terrible idea. The play-in games that they want to do, I think it's frankly a joke. But I don't disagree with the Big Ten coaches and ADs who say that the SEC should play 9 conference games. They should. They should play 9 conference games. But I also think that, I side with the SEC in terms of you can absolutely find some SEC schedules, some 8-game SEC schedules that are way harder than some of the 9-game Big Ten schedules. I mean, the SEC is deeper. There are many more good teams and good programs in the SEC. So I think it's really, you still have to look deeper when you're comparing these schedules. And to me, you need to play 10 Power 4 games. So if the SEC stays at 8, okay, but then you guys should play 2 Power 4 teams, and then everybody plays 10. But again, even with that, what level of Power 4 team are we talking about? And then again, that's where a committee comes in. People complain about the committee. I complain about the committee every week, but I would rather have human beings going through all that data, emphasizing strength of schedule, talking it through, and I personally am glad that the human beings 2 years ago said, look, Florida State's record means they should be in. The computers would put them in, but we're not putting them in because they lost their quarterback and they're not nearly the same team. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like that. I did. I didn't want Florida State in the playoff. They would have lost by 25 points. So the Big Ten is making the big deal out of we need to get rid of the committee. I mean, look, we've had the committee in basketball forever. And again, we complain about them for sure, but it's worked pretty well. And I think we need to just have 5 conference champs, 11 automatic bids once they go to 16. But like you said, the 12 worked well. Why can't we just keep going with the 12?
Yeah, Joe, really quickly before we get into the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, I want to ask about a program and even a head coach who's always seems like he's under the microscope this time of year. James Franklin at Penn State. Obviously, the Nittany Lions advanced to the college football semifinals last year, lose to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, get there after defeating SMU and Boise State along the playoff. This is a team that was picked by the media to be the favorite to win the Big Ten this year. Obviously, they returned quarterback Drew Aller. Give me your thoughts on Pitt State. Obviously, James Franklin has struggled at times to win in the big game at Penn State. Give me your thought process on them, this team, what they're probably capable of, with Drew Aller probably being one of the top quarterbacks selected in the draft next year. But what's the ceiling for this Penn State team, and is that kind of wick under James Franklin's Bunsen burner turned up this year with the talent and expectations that come?
Yeah, look, I think the ceiling is the national championship. I think Penn State's the best team in the coaches poll, and we've got a 1-2 game by the coaches poll between Texas and Ohio State. But I don't see how. I understand Ohio State usually beats Penn State, but like this going into this year, on paper, Penn State's better. Like you said, they have Drew Aller. He could be the top QB taken. He's, I think, certainly going to be a first-round pick. He also hasn't completely put things together, but I have no idea what Julian's saying of Ohio State is going to be. I know he was a big recruit. Plenty of big recruits start playing, college football games, and then we think something completely different of them, or it takes them time. I mean, think about Cade Klubnik early in his career versus what he looks like now. Think about Drew Aller. Drew Aller 2 years ago. I mean, Michigan went in there and beat them and knew that Penn State couldn't beat them with the pass with Drew Aller at quarterback. So the known commodity of his improvement, and then everything else they have on their team. I think they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think they're on the short list of title contenders. And look, all the criticism about Franklin is fair. I do think a lot of that is just it's simply you just can't beat Ohio State. I mean, he had the one huge win over them in 16 or 17, and Ohio State is, when it comes down to it, over the past half century, they're the most recession-proof program. They're the most consistently excellent program. They don't have the most championships, but they're always at the very top of the sport in terms of talent level and usually in terms of coaching. So I think that Ohio State has just skewed that big game record of Franklin's by a lot. I know it's not the only team or not the only big games that he's lost, but if I think that has definitely dramatized the numbers a little bit. But it's fair. Franklin has got a lot to prove this year, but I think he's got the team to prove it. And the fact that they got in last year, had some success in the playoff, I do think that should help a little bit. You expand the playoff and you give teams more opportunities. That's how Ryan Day, who everyone who loves Ohio State wanted fired Thanksgiving weekend last year, ends up winning a national championship, and now people are like, okay, I guess you're all right.
Yeah, you mentioned Ohio State and Ryan Day. You took the words right out of my mouth. He entered the college football playoff when they hosted Tennessee with a stadium packed full of orange, potentially on his way out with the loss. Ohio State marches on to Atlanta and wins the national championship. Obviously, there's a lot of draft picks on last year's roster. They're going to lose their quarterback and Will Howard. You mentioned Julian Sayin, inheriting one of the best weapons in the country at wide receiver in Jeremiah Smith. Talk to me about, obviously, the expectations when you're in Scarlet and Gray is to compete for national championships. But with that offense and the new quarterback coming in with not a lot of experience, talk to me about your preview and outlook on the Buckeyes this fall. With they opened up with Texas, so right out of the gate, they're going to be challenged by some athletes across from them that can compete with them step for step.
Exactly. Yeah, and look, the expectation every year is a national championship for them, and you've got Caleb Downs too, but you lost so much in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Plus, you look at what they did running the ball, what they had. Like you said, Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Jeremiah Smith could be the number one pick. This year he would have gone probably top half of the first round last year. He's an incredible player, incredible talent. But this is as close to rebuilding years you're going to get for Ohio State with an unknown commodity at quarterback. And like I said, a lot of guys off to the NFL who were really key up front. Usually those are the teams that are there at the end, the teams that have, after quarterback, defensive line is the most important factor for a college football national champion. And Ohio State had, studs up front, like I said, on both sides of the ball. So do they have talent to fill in all those gaps? Of course they do. It's Ohio State. But I think they're a little bit overrated. And I think this could be more like a 10-2, maybe even a 9-3 kind of year, which will quickly get people mad at Ryan Day again. Now, as long as one of those wins is against Michigan, which I still would favor, I would favor them in that game based on what those two teams are on paper, then he'll probably be okay. But you have a bit of a down year and lose to Michigan, and they're just going to be furious at you all over again.
Joe,
Go ahead, Calvin. Sorry.
Joe, Oregon's been good for a really long time. They won the Big Ten regular season and Big Ten championship game last year in their first year in the league. But it seems like even though we talk about Oregon as a national championship contender, it seems like we always talk about them in a tier below Penn State and Ohio State, especially now with all of them being in the Big Ten together. Do you think that Oregon can kind of challenge those two for the Big Ten title again and potentially even a national championship?
I think as a program, I think Oregon is going to be right there on the top tier with Dan Lanning. As long as he's staying as coach, I think you're going to see Oregon be right there, right there with Ohio State, and maybe in some years a tier above Penn State. But this year, it's really interesting for them at quarterback. Dante Moore, huge recruit, really didn't show a lot. Granted, not a lot of opportunity, but at UCLA, it wasn't what people were hoping for. Now that's obviously a program that's had all kinds of struggles beyond that, but he's taken over. I mean, so far, quarterbacks go to Oregon and it's like, man, it's like they have a way of of getting the most out of these quarterbacks. And obviously, you look at what happened with Bo Nix there, but even like Dylan Gabriel last year, I mean, tremendous production and efficiency. I mean, if they can get close to that with Dante Moore, then I think they can be really, really good this year. It's just, I think that's, again, a big question for them. So we'll see. But the long term, this season, might be, a little bit of a step back. Long term, though, I don't think there's any question that Dan Lanning has got it, and he's fully utilizing those limitless resources of Oregon to make that program a consistent powerhouse.
Last question for me, Joe. I love to talk about sleepers. We talked about the favorites, obviously Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. Those in the mix. 6 teams from the Big Ten ranked in the coaches' top 25. You have Ohio State at 2, Penn State at 3, Oregon at 7, Illinois at 12, Michigan at 14, and Indiana at 19. Several others in the receiving votes category. Joe, outside of those top 3, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, maybe a team that's not getting talked about enough by the media at this point of the season right now as we get into fall camp, that you have your eye on as a potential team that can maybe push for a CFP berth, or just some that can make some noise and cause some havoc here as we get to November and December?
Yeah, I mean, Illinois, there's a lot of hype for them, so we haven't talked about them, but I certainly think with Bielema, he's got Luke Altmaier back, tons of Letterman and starters back, so they're really good. But if you want to go deeper cut, I will tell you, I think one of the most talented guys at quarterback in the league, who last year was mistake-ridden in his first year, but Aiden Childs from Michigan State, I mean, the pro scouts love the guy. I mean, he has the ability to be a high pick. Now, again, last year, fumbles, interceptions, it was a kind of a mess in Jonathan Smith's first year. They have Nick Marsh, who might be right under the tier of Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, really talented receiver. They've kind of loaded up the receiving core there. It's all about offensive line play, but if Aiden Childs puts it together like they think he can, and of course he came from Oregon State with Jonathan Smith, that could at least be a spoiler kind of team, like a 8-win kind of team that could upset some of these teams. But I mean, look, I think that Nebraska, every year we think they're going to be good, and they're not as good as they're supposed to be. Dominic Raiola is a sophomore. I look at them too, and I even think Iowa. I think we're going to see some more passing success from them, and they're going to keep trying to distance themselves from that era under Kirk Ferentz where it was just unwatchable football.
Yeah, Joe Rexrode, joining us via The Athletic. Joe, I would be remiss to ask you another quick question before we let you go. We haven't talked about USC, obviously, and head coach Lincoln Riley. He makes the move over several years ago from Oklahoma, and you're thinking USC, they're back, and they're going to make a run potentially to college football playoff and national championship, and it just hasn't been that to this point. How do you assess Lincoln Riley and the Trojans heading into this year really quickly?
Yeah, huge year for them. And, I look at Lincoln Riley a little bit like I look at Brian Kelly in the SEC. Now, Kelly's had a bit more success. Lincoln Riley, it's really been somewhat stunning because, I was like a lot of people and thought it would just translate right over, and here we go. They're just going to be right there competing for national titles. I think with both guys, can you put together a decent defense? That hasn't been the only problem. But, I look at LSU this year, I think with Garrett Nussmeier, I think they're going to be fantastic. But can they stop anyone? And I look at USC. Can they figure out a way to get some stops? Because, I think that they've got the ingredients to be good on offense. So I think that's the whole story. But, yeah, 8-4 or whatever, that's just not cutting it at USC. So I think he is one of the coaches really under the microscope in all of college football this year.
Joe, you mentioned it a second ago, but you talked about how we always think Nebraska is going to be a lot better than they end up being throughout the season. Just why do you think that is? Why do you think that, not even since the heyday in the 90s, but, just recently, why do you think that Nebraska hasn't been able to kind of build some consistency and put together some decent seasons?
Well, I mean, some of the Nebraska fall off is just the reality of recruiting now. Although it's now different with NIL and everything, but they really suffered in the era of when we got into unofficials and early recruiting and early commitments. They just they can't have those big events like Ohio State and Alabama or whoever has. There's no talent around them, So like some of the recruiting calendar stuff was just a reality for them. And for those of us of a certain age, we remember when that was the dominant program. But I also think, you look at like the Scott Frost era, it's amazing how poorly they did in close games, right? Like they've just had this unbelievable run of losing these toss-up games. And so I do think that, and, again, it's kind of like last year, you see some talent, but you still are also talking about a freshman quarterback, right? So I think there's a lot of things to that. I do think Matt Rule is good enough to at least get them to respectability and be solid again. And then we'll see if they can take a step after that. If he doesn't, then I start to wonder if they'll ever get there and there's some kind of curse on the place.
Joe Rexrode for The Athletic. You can follow him on X at Joe Rexrode. Also see his work on The Athletic's X page as well at The Athletic. Joe, we appreciate you taking some time here on your Wednesday and joining us here on Main Street Sports Today. I hope you have a good rest of the week, man.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me. Good talking to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Right, that is Joe Rexrode from The Athletic. Talking a little Big Ten football as we get ready to kick off the college football season here just a few weeks away. It's that time of the year, Calvin, so I'm looking forward to that. A lot of great stuff right there, a lot of good storylines in the Big Ten, a lot of great programs as well. Kind of mentioned it with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, and that is not even talking about Oregon and USC and even Nebraska, a powerhouse when we were before we were born a long time ago. So good stuff right there from Joe. Some stuff that's not good, Calvin, is the way our Atlanta Braves have been playing of late. We'll get into that in a little baseball news and notes from across the league right after this break on Main Street Sports Today. It'll be our MLB chatter segment and this day in Braves history right after this commercial break here on Main Street Sports Today. Stick with us.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, they become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. Buckle up. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Miller. Main Street Media is partnering with Borchetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway to send a family of 4 to the race August 31st. To register, please visit any Main Street Media website and look for the Register Here banner. You'll also receive some fantastic Borchetta Bourbon Music City merchandise. We look forward to seeing you at the race.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
This day in Braves history, August 6, 2010. Tom Glavine becomes the seventh player overall and fourth pitcher in Braves history to have his number retired. The ceremony took place prior to the Braves versus Giants at Turner Field. This game also kind of represented the 20,000th career game in the franchise history since it originated back in Boston. Glavine was also inducted, obviously, into the MLB Hall of Fame after winning 2 Cy Youngs and being elected to 10 All-Star games. That is today's note in Braves history. Obviously, I think I just have a fascination with Tom Glavine. The last time we did this last week, it was also Tom Glavine note on this day in Braves history. So hopefully I'll diversify the portfolio a little bit next week. Obviously, Tom Glavine, one of the all-time greats, not only for Braves history, but MLB's history as well, helped lead them to that 1995 World Series Game 6 win over then the Cleveland Indians. And, Calvin, there's been a lot of trouble this year with the Braves. Kind of saw a stat today that they're on pace for 98 losses. And just how far rather the mighty have fallen. This was a team that 2 years ago had over 100 wins, tied the MLB record for most home runs in a season. Even last year, you thought with everything that could go wrong, they still made the playoffs. And you're thinking, man, all the obstacles and hurdles they overcame, they still made the playoffs. Maybe we can be back. And just seems like this year, it's really took a turn for the worst.
Yeah, I saw a stat this morning. I think it said they have to win, 16 of their last 51 games to avoid losing 100 for the first time in franchise history. And, at least like when we were younger, the Braves weren't necessarily good, but they weren't awful either. And, we kind of got spoiled by the last 7 or 8 years. Last year broke the streak when they had won the division. I believe it was 7 years in a row. So we've kind of gotten spoiled over the last almost decade. And, they had some really good players come through there. Freddie Freeman for a long time, Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. Austin Riley, up until the last 2 years, looked like he was going to be shaping up to be the Braves third baseman for the next decade. Matt Olson's locked up for a very long time. I just don't know what happened. It was basically the same core 2 years ago when they had that really good season, won over 100 games. But, right now it seems like everybody's in a slump at one time, and everybody's getting hurt. Austin Riley's on the injured list now. So hopefully, for the rest of the year, they can keep everybody healthy and then just kind of regroup for next year.
You were close on your stat. The Braves are just 2 100-loss seasons since moving to Atlanta in 1966. They lost 101 games in 1977, and their last 100-loss season came all the way back in 1988. They lost 106 games in that season. That's only 2 times that the franchise has lost over 100 games since 1935. So losing is really not a thing with the Braves. All the success that they've had in the 90s. Nicknamed the team of the 90s, and just the past 7 years look like the Braves were going to go on that 90s type run where there could be multiple World Series on this window, and it just seems like the wheels have fallen off the proverbial bus here in 2025. So last night, another loss for the Atlanta Braves. They lose the series and a look to avoid the sweep tonight against the Milwaukee Brewers, who suddenly have the best record in Major League Baseball. Last night, the Brew Crew were 7-2 victors over the Bravos last night at Truist Park. Freddie Peralta, 5 innings pitched there, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 7 Ks. He outdueled Joey Wentz, who went 5 1/3, gave up 5 hits, 5 earned runs, and 3 strikeouts. The big thing for the Braves this year, Calvin, is their lack of opportunity with runners in scoring position. Last night, they left 14 runners on base, left the bases loaded twice. Just their inability to not get the big hit is really what's plagued this Braves offense. I believe they lost over 20 games this year by a single run. So how their record could be flipped if they could just get some offensive production and come through in those spots when it matters most. They'll take the series finale tonight. Jose Quintana, the lefty veteran, taking the mound for the Brewers tonight. He'll oppose Spencer Strider, who has a 5-8 record with a 3.71 ERA. I mentioned the Brew Crew, and they're very close to home here in Nashville. And you can say, well, why is that the case? they are their AAA affiliate is the Nashville Sounds down here at Hit City at First Horizon Park. And I mentioned that they have the best record in Major League Baseball by 3 games right now over the Toronto Blue Jays. And it is because of their young core. A lot of former Sounds who've even been with the Sounds this year have made their way to the big leagues and are producing. Obviously, if you're looking online with us, the big cog here is Jacob Mizorowski, who's on the injury list right now, pitching the All-Star game. Throws 100 miles per hour fastball, a 96 miles per hour cutter / slider. Been phenomenal thus far for the Brewers. Also have Caleb Durbin, former Sound, Logan Henderson, who's taken the Miz's spot in Milwaukee. Also Chad Patrick, Isaac Collins, all former Sounds. Even Andrew Vaughn now, who been getting constantly big hit after big hit for the Brew Crew. All these guys came through here, Nashville and Hit City. So if you're even looking more of a reason why to go watch the Sounds play, besides the beautiful backdrop of First Horizon Park in downtown Nashville, it's because the Sounds are getting guys to the big leagues, and there are still guys, even in their organization right now, that are on the cusp of Milwaukee. So a great note right there for the Brewers, who find themselves with the best record in baseball, Calvin, a team that really didn't spend a lot at the deadline, but is going to rely on its young core to try to get them to back to the NLCS.
Yeah, and it's always weird with the Brewers because they're really good. It seems like every single year they just never have the playoff success. It seems like almost every year they don't even make a run at it. Outside of last year, made that run to the NLCS, but it seems like outside of that year they're always losing in the wild card if they have to play in the wild card, losing the divisional or things like that. But it looks like the Brewers are really set up this year to kind of make a run at the World Series and potentially make a run at a championship with this young core.
Yeah, they're a nightmare to play against. Obviously, their pitching is very elite, and they don't have the most thunderous lineup per se, but they're very athletic. They run the bases like banshees, and so the Brewers' best record in Major League Baseball as we enter, I guess, the dog days of summer here in August. So a lot of good things from the Brew Crew right there. Wade's Astros, 7-3 victors last night over the Miami Marlins. I mentioned the Marlins. One of the hottest teams in baseball over this last recent stretch. They swept the New York Yankees, who've been slumping. We'll get to them in a little bit this past weekend, and have kind of inched their way towards the 500 mark. The Astros have taken the first 2 games of that series. I mentioned in the rundown last night, Jose Altuve and Yainer Diaz with home runs in that one. The Stros will go for the sweep and the proverbial fish fry. That game is going to be in progress here in the next hour. So keep your eyes on that one. That is going to be a 3:40 first pitch with Spencer Allegretti and Jansen Junk, former Nashville Sound, taking the ball for the fish in that one. Some news and notes last night across MLB really quickly as we approach the 3 o'clock hour. Shea Langoliers, former Braves prospect who got traded for Matt Olson, became the 4th catcher in MLB history last night to record a 3-homer game. He belted 2 he had 3 homers last night in the A's 13-7 victory over the Washington Nationals. Langoliers hit it in the leadoff spot for the first time and homered off Mackenzie Gore to open the game. Langoliers is the only catcher in MLB history to have a 3-homer game from the leadoff spot, and he has 22 home runs on the season. The 27-year-old added a double in the 8th inning and finished 5 for 6. With 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and 15 total bases. The hits and runs are both career highs, and the total bases are tied for the most for a catcher since 1900. So Langoliers doing some damage. Those A's can bop. Obviously, we saw what Nick Kurtz did just a couple weeks ago against the Astros. So former Braves prospect doing some nice work for the A's.
It'd be nice if the Braves could get that production out of the catcher spot this year.
Well, the Braves catchers aren't terribly bad. I like the duo of Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin. I'm happy with that. Obviously, there's been rumors that they'll trade one of the two, but I'm happy with the production so far. Moving on, Aaron Judge, obviously a key cog to the Yankees in their hopeful run back to the World Series this year. He returned from the injured list last night, DH'd as he's recovering from his injury where he had a strained flexor tendon. There's still no clarity on when the All-Star slugger will return to the outfield. He went 0 for 3 last night, batting third in the Yankees' 2-0 loss to the Texas Rangers. He'll begin a throwing program on Wednesday, which is today, according to manager Aaron Boone. The Yankees, losers of 5 in a row. So obviously you think teams can take off after the trade deadline, and they have not done such. They are trailing Toronto in the AL East standings, and just hold that third and final wildcard spot by a half a game. So the Yankees need to get going here as it's pennant chase time.
Yeah, they had a really good first half of the season. They had a really big lead on that AL East, and then kind of up toward the All-Star break, and ever since the second half of the season started, Toronto's just kind of, turned into one of the best teams in the sport. Like you said, they're only behind the Brewers for a couple games for best record in baseball. They've had that really good young core for a couple years now. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette. They're just good. Vladdy Jr. had that really good season in 2021. Has kind of been steady ever since, but now the whole team's kind of putting it all together, and they're challenging the Yankees for that division title.
Really quickly, some great information that came out that Calvin shared with us today. We're going to include it here in the baseball chatter segment. And Calvin, if you want to, if Mark would like to pull a picture up here in the grab bag, we can come back to Jen Powell. Jen Powell, MLB umpire. She's been laboring away in the minor leagues for some time now. She will get the call. She will become the first female to call an MLB game here this weekend when the Braves and the Marlins get together this weekend at Truist Park. Mark, going to try to send you a link really quickly on that. We can throw that in the grab bag and elaborate more. But she will umpire 3 games during this weekend's Marlins and Braves series, including both ends of Saturday's doubleheader and the series finale on Sunday when she will be behind the plate. She's steady climbing through the umpire ranks. She began her professional baseball career as an umpire in rookie ball in 2016. She reached AAA in 2023, becoming the first female umpire at that level in 34 years. She was the home plate umpire for the AAA championship that September. In 2024, Powell became the first female umpire in a spring training game since Ria Cortestero in 2007. She was a AAA crew chief in 2024 and worked more spring training games in 2025. So if you want to, we can dive a little bit more in the grab bag. I'll throw a link in there for Mark, and we can pull up a picture of Jen. She worked the plate last night here at First Horizon Park when the Sounds and the Jumbo Shrimp got together. So she'll make the short drive to Atlanta, about 3.5 hours, and join the Bigs. So congrats to Jen Powell. She makes history, becoming the first female umpire in the big league. So that'll do it here on our baseball chatter. Well, Mark might be throwing up a picture. Okay, we'll do it in the grab bag. I'll put a link in there for Mark. That'll do it here on the baseball chatter segment of Main Street Sports Today. Calvin, it's time for the grab bag, and we'll do that next here on Main Street Sports Today. Stay with us.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today. Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back into this Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Streets. Today, I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Calvin got a taste of the grab bag yesterday with Wade Neely, and he's going to get a second dose of it again here on this Wednesday afternoon here in Nashville, Tennessee. I believe Calvin is at his respective home in Clarksville. Calvin, going to jump right into it with some NFL notes across the league. Not good news if you're J.J. McCarthy, who is set to play in the preseason opener this week for the Vikings this week. He'll be out without one of his favorite targets, or what should be one of his favorite targets, for the first 3 games of the National Football season. Wide receiver Jordan Addison was suspended the first 3 games for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. The team announced on Tuesday. Addison will still be able to practice and play during the preseason, but will miss the Vikings' first 3 games against the Chicago Bears, Atlanta Falcons, and Cincinnati Bengals. The suspension is a result of Addison's arrest in July of 2024 on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol. He was released from custody 2 hours after his arrest and was charged with 2 misdemeanors: driving under the influence of alcohol and driving with a blood alcohol content over California's limit of 0.8. Last month, Addison agreed to plea of a lesser charge to settle the case. Calvin, this is one of the premier wide receivers last year in the National Football League. Caught 70 passes for 911 yards and 10 touchdowns in his rookie season, and then caught 63 passes for 875 and 9 touchdowns in 15 games last year. So he's that second weapon in a really good Minnesota Vikings offense under a great offensive-minded head coach Kevin O'Connell that J.J. McCarthy is going to be without here for the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, this is going to be a really big loss for J.J. McCarthy for the first 3 games, especially being a first-year starter in the NFL. Like you said, one of the premier targets in the league. So anything that they can do to help J.J. McCarthy just kind of settle in faster and get a little bit more comfortable. Addison was going to be kind of that go-to guy for him. So it might be a rough start for J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings until they get Jordan Addison back in Week 4.
Yeah, you mentioned that Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell does a great job incorporating his offense and getting guys the football. So I'm sure he has a game plan, obviously scripted up for J.J. McCarthy. These snaps in the preseason are obviously so critical for him. He didn't play football last year, obviously got hurt in the preseason, which made way and led an opportunity for Sam Darnold to have the year that he had and eventually sign a contract, a monster one at that, with the Seattle Seahawks. So hopefully that JJ get his kind of legs under him this preseason and get going, but he will be without what should be one of his favorite targets in Jordan Addison. The Browns, Calvin, have played musical chairs with their quarterback situation all year long ever since the NFL draft. They took Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in the draft to go along with Kenny Pickett and welcoming back the old Wiley veteran Joe Flacco. Just last week, they signed Tyler Huntley to be their 5th quarterback on the roster, but Shedeur Sanders is going to be the guy to start the preseason for the Brownies, as Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Kenny Pickett will all sit this week. He will start the Browns opener on Friday against the Carolina Panthers. Kevin Stefanski made that announcement this morning, confirming it. Obviously, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel are both dealing with hamstring injuries. And currently, veteran Joe Flacco holds the number 1 QB spot on the initial depth chart and won't receive any playing time this week. Shedeur Sanders was listed as the number 4 quarterback on the depth chart earlier this week. So this is a valuable opportunity for him, Calvin, to try to creep up the board on what's now become, and obviously has been for a while, a really loaded, I guess maybe not loaded is the right word, crowded Browns quarterback room that also now includes Snoop Huntley, who also sees some time this Friday night when the Browns open up the preseason.
Yeah, I would assume Joe Flacco is going to be their week 1 starter. But, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel are all set to sit out Friday's preseason game. So this could be an opportunity for Shedeur Sanders and Tyler Huntley to kind of show their progression throughout the offseason, throughout camp and stuff like that. And like you said, kind of creep their way up the depth chart. And, maybe one of them, could eventually become the backup quarterback, or eventually, if Joe Flacco goes down, could be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, from everything that I've heard coming out of Ohio, Calvin, is that Shedeur Sanders, statistically, when it comes to charting the things that the media can see, has looked really good. Has yet to throw an interception in practice, has looked the part. He has been dealing with a shoulder injury that's kept him out of a couple practices here lately, but glad to see that he's at least healthy and willing to suit up for the Browns here on Friday night. Obviously, I think the talent is there. The football acumen and knowledge is there. Obviously, you have to gain something by being the son of primetime Deion Sanders. So I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see Shedeur at least get the opportunity to show what he can do. This is a Browns franchise that is desperate, in capital desperate, for a franchise quarterback. They've dragged Joe Flacco off the street here, who is very old, to say the least. So they need to find their franchise quarterback. And one of these guys most likely is going to get cut. And that's something to keep an eye on, obviously, for the Titans with the news that Will Levis is out for the season with the shoulder injury. I know the Titans say they're happy with their backup options, but if an option of Kenny Pickett, potential Dylan Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders maybe comes available, at least if they're the Titans, to look for an insurance policy behind Cam Ward, you think about that idea. I guess a feel-good story as we continue on in the grab back here in the NFL. Keenan Allen is going home. The former Chargers wide receiver is returning to Los Angeles on a 1-year, $8.52 million deal, according to NFL Network insiders Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero. The 2013 third-round choice of the Chargers spent 11 seasons with the club and earned 6 Pro Bowls for departing for the Chicago Bears last season. Through that decade plus with the franchise, Allen produced 904 receptions, 10,530 yards, and 59 touchdowns. He gets to go back home and play for Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, and a really good Chargers wide receiver room that now has Lad McConkey. So I don't know if Allen is going to get the most targets on the team, but the Chargers cash in and bring back one of their franchise legends back home.
Yeah, he's a 6-time Pro Bowler. He's the 2017 AP and Pro Football Writers Association Comeback Player of the Year. He's the 2013 Pro Football Writers Association Offensive Rookie of the Year. Had a really good career with the Chargers. They could just never find the postseason success. They're kind of like the Brewers in a little sense in baseball. It seems like they're good just about every year, especially now with Justin Herbert. But those years that they had Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates and a young Mike Williams and a prime Keenan Allen, they were contenders in the AFC, but could just never get past the Giants, like the Patriots and just those really good teams over in the AFC. So Keenan Allen going back home just kind of gives another target for Justin Herbert. He's obviously not going to get the most targets, like you said, out of that receiving group, but it's kind of cool to see that one of the best players in their franchise history is going to kind of close out the back half of his career with the team that he started it with.
Yeah, and it's a big pickup for the Chargers, who you mentioned Mike Williams kind of abruptly retired this offseason. So it just gives, I guess, more room in that wide receiver room and some more experience in there to lead not only those young guys. I mean, Ladd McConkey is going to be a second-year pro. The kind of experience that Keenan Allen can present to a room like that. I guess one of my favorite fantasy pickups is Keenan Allen, just his knack for getting catches and receptions and yards. So he'll be a nice security blanket for a Chargers offense that is going to be talented. Obviously, they attacked the running back position in the first round of the draft. We know that Jim Harbaugh likes to run that football and play action pass and play some good defense. So you mentioned it. The Chargers are a really good football team. It just so happens that they play in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs, who kind of made themselves the team of this era right now with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. So it's tough sledding playing in the AFC West, and it seems like the Chargers cannot get over the hump. And I guess it might be a mental thing now playing the Chiefs. So another weapon for Justin Herbert and his offense. Calvin, you mentioned it, at least to me, before the show. The FedEx playoffs are set to start this weekend, and you're going to have a front row seat to it. Maybe not the front row, but you'll be there in Memphis and West Tennessee this weekend as the FedEx playoffs get started here. Walk me through it, your thought process, and what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'll be there on Sunday to see who wins the first round of the FedEx Cup playoffs. World number 2, Rory McIlroy, announced he was not going to play the other day. But he's so high in the standings that he doesn't have to play this week or next week to qualify for the Tour Championship round. So no Rory McIlroy this week, which probably opens the door even more for the world number 1 Scotty Scheffler. Won 2 out of the 4 majors this year. Got 4 majors for his career now. He's been up in those talks with Tiger Woods for the last couple of years. Tee times came out earlier. So the top 70 players will play in this tournament, and then after these 4 rounds that are over on Sunday, they'll cut the field to 50 players, and then they'll move on to the next event, and then the week after that we'll conclude the Tour Championship. If Scotty Scheffler wins the Tour Championship this year, he'll have gone back to back. 2 FedEx Cup championships, I believe, is tied for the most ever. I think the first year of the FedEx Cup playoffs was 2007, I think. Tiger Woods has won it twice. Rory McIlroy has won it twice. But I don't believe anybody else has won it more than once. So Scotty Scheffler going for his second consecutive FedEx Cup playoff championship.
Yeah, Calvin, I am a very casual golf viewer. I will watch the Masters. I might even watch the Open, but just the normal kind of run amok tournaments. No offense to that. It doesn't catch my eye. You think as a former baseball player, there would be some golf kind of in my retirement in my blood, but it doesn't fit me. So I'm glad that you're going to be there and enjoying it. Hopefully you stay cool. The weather across the state has been better. Last week was absolutely miserably hot. So hopefully it's good weather for you guys this weekend in West Tennessee as they get the FedEx playoffs going. To the NBA, my San Antonio Spurs have reached an agreement with Stars point guard De'Aaron Fox on a 4-year, $228 million maximum extension. This was reported just a few days ago to ESPN's Shams Charania. The max deal has no player option in the final year. It secures Fox's tenure in San Antonio through the 2029-2030 season. Obviously, the Spurs acquired Fox, the former Sacramento King, in a trade at the NBA trade deadline last year. The Spurs, Calvin, don't know if you know too much about them, but they have a very young core, obviously now with Victor Wembanyama, who missed the end of last year with some blood clot issues. But they also drafted Dylan Harper, number 2 overall in the NBA draft. They've had the last 2 Rookie of the Years, obviously with Wemby, and last year with Stephon Castle. So the Spurs have kind of built this young core that could compete, obviously, in a loaded Western Conference that has the defending NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder. They also signed Luke Kornet this offseason from the Boston Celtics to kind of add some rim protection and some three-point shooting to that team, along with Wemby. So De'Aaron Fox one of the premier players in this league. Just looking at his stats really quickly, Calvin, he's one of 2 players to average over 20 points, 5 assists, and 1 steal in each of the past 6 seasons. He also has 10,000 points, 3,000 assists, and 700 steals since entering the NBA in 2017 and 2018. Last year, he averaged 23.5 points, 6.3 assists, and 4.8 rebounds. So a really nice player who gets a nice payday.
Yeah, and the Spurs have kind of been looking for that kind of rejuvenance since, Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and all those guys left, and Kawhi Leonard kind of later in those early 2010s years when they were kind of going back and forth, winning championships with LeBron and D Wade and Chris Bosh down in Miami. But the last couple of years they've kind of been sitting there around the bottom of the Western Conference. They've kind of relinquished the hold they had on that conference for the last 20 years before the last 3 or 4. They've kind of given way to teams like the Thunder and the Timberwolves and the Clippers, teams like that. So the Spurs are just kind of looking to get some of that momentum back, kind of find their way up to maybe the middle or the top of the Western Conference where they were so used to being for so long under Greg Popovich.
Yeah, it's an absolutely arms race in the Western Conference. You mentioned there's a lot of young talent in the Western Conference, but obviously with the Oklahoma City Thunder at the top of the list. Calvin, we kind of mentioned it and got into it with Joe Rexrode of The Athletic. Not the NFL, excuse me, the national, not the national football either. Sorry, the college football top 25 poll has been released by the coaches. Just looking at that, as Mark pulls up the graphic, obviously we mentioned there's 6 teams in the Big Ten in the top 25, but there are 9 teams from the SEC that are listed. They have obviously 4 teams ranked inside the top 9, with Texas number 1, Georgia at number 4. Alabama at number 8, and LSU at number 9. They also have South Carolina at 13, Ole Miss at 15, Florida at 17, Tennessee at 18, and Texas A&M at 21, all listed within the top 25. Kind of a keynote that I took away, though, the media picked Penn State as the favorite in the Big Ten, and we see in the coaches poll that Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country, something that kind of perked my eye, obviously, with me also looking at my Notre Dame Fighting Irish at number 5.
Yeah, something that kind of sticks out to me is just as a casual viewer of the whole country, I wouldn't expect South Carolina to be that high, and we kind of heard Joe talk about it a little earlier about Illinois. I wouldn't expect Illinois to be as high as they are right there at 12. So those 2 kind of stick out to me. I also wouldn't expect SMU to be up there at 16. And then we also talked about Indiana with Joe, Kansas State up there. But yeah, the SEC is dominating the preseason poll once again. And there's probably a good chance that we're going to see the national champion come out of the SEC or the Big Ten again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, though, I think South Carolina is definitely deserving of this ranking. They almost snuck into the college football playoff last year, and they returned one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Lenora Sellers. So definitely, in my mind, keep an eye on the Gamecocks. Really quickly, we mentioned this note in our baseball chatter segment, but it's history. It's a historic day in Major League Baseball as Jen Powell, to make history, becomes the first female umpire in the big leagues. We mentioned that here in our chatter segment. She will umpire 3 games this weekend in Atlanta as the Marlins and the Braves do battle at Truist Park. She will umpire both ends of Saturday's doubleheader, and she will take the plate on Sunday in the series finale. We mentioned she steadily climbed up through the umpire ranks. Started her career in 2016 in rookie ball, reached the AAA level in 2023, and became the first female umpire at that level in 34 years. She worked the plate in the AAA championship that September. So it's just very documented, Calvin, the toil and the labor that comes with as a player to get through the minor leagues and get to the big leagues. It's the same thing for the umpires. They're people too, and they're working on their craft. So this is a very historic moment for Jen Powell, who I mentioned had the plate last night at First Horizon Park here in Nashville as the Jumbo Shrimp and the Sounds did battle. But a historic moment for Jen here.
Yeah, and a lot of times we don't see women get opportunities like this in men's professional sports. So it kind of adds to kind of I don't know if it's a word, but the level of coolness that that Jen's kind of putting on here. I don't know where she stands in terms of how many female umpires have ever. Well, I guess she's the first. Duh. We
Right.
just said that. She's gonna be she's gonna be the first female to ever umpire a major league game. So that's gonna be really cool. We saw. I think I always forget her name, but the woman that does the TV broadcast for the A's. She's I believe the only female TV broadcaster in Major League
Play-by-play.
Baseball. Yeah, play-by-play. So yeah, it's really cool to see women get these opportunities in men's professional sports, and whether she's a good umpire or bad umpire, she's gonna make history either way.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity to work with Jen here in Nashville really quickly as we butt up against the break. Very personable, very nice. So I've enjoyed working with her here at First Horizon Park in Nashville, and obviously wish her nothing but the best. A very deserving person in my mind of the opportunity. So looking forward to watching her this weekend as my Bravos play, but watching Jen make history as well. So something really cool. Something also really cool is talking a little NASCAR. I know Calvin might not think that, but NASCAR is really cool. And we're looking forward to talking with Heather Williams, who does a great job out there in East Tennessee. She'll be talking a little NASCAR with us here next. Also, a little MLB Speedway Classic. We'll see how wet she got. It was pouring buckets. That is coming from my mom, who made the trip to Bristol. So we'll get Heather's account of all the hoopla and obviously the cool images that came from this weekend in Bristol. So stay tuned right after this commercial break here on Main Street Sports Today.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
They walk among us, but at 240 miles per hour, they become something more. They're thrill seekers, risk takers, and maybe just a little bit unhinged. Buckle up. This new era of speed, this racing revolution, it's just getting started.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back into this wild and wacky edition of Main Street Sports Today. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. I know we're not supposed to have favorites on this show, but I can admit that at least this is my favorite segment of Wednesday shows, where we welcome in Heather Williams of WCYB-TV out in Johnson City as we get to talk about Calvin's favorite subject, a little NASCAR. As he like to say, some left turns, but we'll have some left and right turns this weekend. So, Calvin, get ready for that one. Heather, how are you doing?
Doing well, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing well. Hopefully you stayed nice and dry. I saw you were a participant, a media member this weekend at the MLB Speedway Classic at Bristol Motor Speedway. Before we talk about the rain and the weather that kind of ensued, just kind of talk about just how so many people came near and far to see an event like that. Obviously, before the rain came, it was a beautiful setting with all the fans kind of surrounding the field at Thunder Valley. So just kind of give us a sense of what you saw on Saturday night.
I mean, it was a really cool event. 91,000 people were on hand on Saturday night. And, kudos to the roughly 45 to 50 that stuck around to Sunday. I mean, about half the crowd came back for the actual game. It was really disappointing. It would have been very beautiful under the lights, but even in the daytime, it was really cool environment. The energy, because of the way the last great Coliseum is and how it was kind of shoved in one corner, the energy and just you could just feel it on the field. It was a great event, especially if you were a Braves fan.
Heather, I don't want to take anything away from, kind of the concept of how cool this game was, but when you kind of talk about the logistics of it, they decided to still play the game after almost a 2.5-hour rain delay. The concession stands were running out of food. And I read that the Reds are supposed to have an off day that Sunday. Both teams had a home game taken away for this. When you kind of factor all that in, do you think that this is something that Major League Baseball and NASCAR will try to continue to work out and try to do?
Well, I mean, both teams had an off day on Sunday that they lost. But I mean, it's no different than the Rickwood Classic or the Field of Dreams game as far as, losing. The Reds are the ones that lost their home game. And when you do these special events, somebody's going to lose a home game. But I think these events are important, whether it be Rickwood, whether it be when they played in the military base or when they played in London or when they played the Field of Dreams games. I think it's important for baseball to take these events to parts of the country that don't normally, or the world in the case of London, don't normally get to see Major League Baseball. That's how you grow the sport. The rain was really unfortunate. It caused a lot of the logistical issues that people were upset about. Bristol Motor Speedway, they have 100,000 people in there every fall for the night race. Even now, with the attendance down, it was at one point 160, but now it's around 100 that come in the fall. They know how to do these events. But when you have people coming in at noon and because of the rain delay, not leaving till after midnight, and unlike at the NASCAR event, they couldn't bring their own food and drink in. That's what caused, the food to run out. You don't have a unlimited amount of food in the concession stands. It's not, a bottomless pit. And when you played, or were there 3 hours longer than everybody thought they were going to be, that caused an issue. The rain also caused some issues with the getting fans out after the race, because at a NASCAR race, and the plan was for this event, they will hold certain lots when the game is over and empty them one by one so that everybody's leaving in the orderly manner. We're not overwhelming the little 4-lane road that's right in front of the track, because the town of Bristol quadrupled in size. There's 30,000 people that live in Bristol. There were 90,000 people at this game. But they have this down to a science until it rained, and then none of the lots are held because the game's not over, and everybody rushes to the road all at once, and it causes gridlock. So, those are things that are very unfortunate, but I don't know how you avoid them. It just kind of things that happen. For those that were patient, for those that stuck around, that could stick around, and I realize people can't always. That's always something that happens when NASCAR races get rained out. It was an amazing event. For those who could stick it out till Sunday, it ended up being really cool, and I think really good for the sport. The rain is the reason why I think, in my opinion, that Bristol Motor Speedway owner Marcus Smith has been kicking around the idea of possibly putting a dome or a retractable roof on Bristol. So for these kind of events, it doesn't get rained out, right? You spend all this time, this money, this energy, and then rain ruins it. Because I think they want to do more of these events. The NHL was actually at this game. scouting it for a potential, Winter Classic site. So I think that there could be the possibility of a lot happening at Bristol. Will baseball come back? Maybe, maybe not. It was a really tough build, an ambitious build, but there will continue to be other events like that at Bristol. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah, Heather, is really unfortunate as a Braves fan. I've had a lot to bemoan this season, but was really looking forward to the pitching matchup between two Tennessee natives and Chase Burns from here in the Mid-State and Spencer Strider of CAK. So that sucks, but it was a great event. Obviously, I watched it on Sunday on Fox. Great event. Happy that my Braves won. That's about as much joy and Mo and Calvin and I have had this season. Kind of transitioning to NASCAR, it was a big weekend for William Byron. Picks up his second win of the season, first since the Daytona 500. Kind of hard to believe with all the speed that comes out of that 24 Chevrolet. It's kind of been a hard summer for him. He had 5 finishes this past summer, really, of 27th or worse, I believe. So a really big win for him as he tries to not only get some momentum for the playoffs, but try to chase down this regular season title. So a big win for him in Iowa this weekend, Heather.
Yeah, and the win put him back into the regular season points lead. So very much, as you said, neither, because and every team goes through this, right? It's a long season. There's going to be one stretch where you're not going to be, hitting on all cylinders. And he's been in that, but they've been slowly kind of working their way out of that, running a little bit better, running a little bit more consistent. And they took advantage of the strategy that was there. They probably weren't the fastest car on Sunday. That was really probably Brad Keselowski, or maybe a handful of others. I think the 12 of Blaney was pretty good too, but part of winning in NASCAR is the fastest car doesn't always win. You have to win and hit the strategy and, execute. And, Williams was able to do all 3 of those.
Yeah, you mentioned Brad Keselowski. He had a really fast Ford Mustang this past weekend. Obviously, there's only 3 races to go before the NASCAR playoffs. Do you consider this past weekend maybe his best shot at winning a race? Obviously, with Watkins Glen coming up in Richmond and Daytona, those are some wild card races. We'll get into Watkins Glen specifically here in a minute. But Brad was really fast this weekend. I know he had to be disappointed with the amount of laps he led in the stages that he won, not being able to get to victory lane.
Yes, but he's been around the sport long enough to know that that's kind of how it goes. I do think this is probably one of his best shots. This weekend at Watkins Glen will not be one of his best shots. He's not known as a road racer, but he is pretty good on the short tracks with Richmond, and he's really good on the super speedways at Daytona. So I think he feels like, logistically, he has 2 really good shots left to get a win. He could technically still point his way in, although he's pretty far back. Position-wise, he's in as good a position points-wise as he's been all year, because they are running really well right now. I would expect him to be a pretty major player at Richmond. I think that that's really where that team's going to, push all their chips in to Richmond and try to get the win there, because he is so good on the short tracks and he's not that great on the road courses.
Yeah, we've talked, obviously, Heather, here on the show about the regular season points chase between the 3 Hendrick teammates and William Byron, Carl Larson, and Chase Elliott, and obviously Denny Hamlin hanging in there as well. There's been a lot of talk on NASCAR social media, though, about just the playoff format, right? Mark Martin has kind of been in this, and there's been some back and forth. What do you feel like is best for the sport? I know this is kind of a personal question. There's been talks about, rewarding the regular season championship and continuing those standings into the playoffs and kind of going away from this, win and end type of format. What are your thoughts on particularly what's best for NASCAR?
Well, first of all, I find all of the NASCAR discussion right now and kind of the nostalgia really amusing, because I lived through all of that time, right? I lived through full season championships. I saw something today on X where people were calling the Gen 4 car the best generation of race car ever. And we are where we are for a reason. I don't think the point system is perfect now. The playoff system is not perfect. But the chase which involved into the playoffs was designed because people hated the full season championship. They hated the fact that you could win a championship and only win 1 race. The year that really kind of broke the regular season, like the full season championship, was Matt Kenseth's championship year. He won 1 race. Ryan Newman, on the other hand, had like 7 poles and won 6 races or something, 10 poles, 6 races, something obscene. And people were like, how can our champion have 1/5 of the wins of another guy? And that's what created the chase for the championship. And then it's just evolved to several iterations to where we are now. So it's just amusing to me that now we want to go back to something that everybody universally hated. Like, I lived through that. And there wasn't really the kind of social media, but just talking to people, the outcry was pretty loud. So, and the Gen 4 car sucked. I mean, that generation car killed 5 or 6 drivers. Like, the reason we ended up where we are now is because we had to make cars safer so that people wouldn't die in race cars. So the nostalgia is great. And looking back on our heroes when we were children, or, even before some people that are involved in this conversation were even born, it's great. And Mark Martin is one of the heroes of the sport. I do not want to take away anything from him. He's one of the smartest people in the sport. But we've evolved for a reason, and for some pretty good reasons in this sport. So I think we do need to fix the playoffs. Like, I don't think for NASCAR, a one race playoff works for a number of different reasons. Maybe a final round of 3 or 4 races where the best average or the most wins in that time wins a championship would probably be a better way to do this. But we have to keep pushing this sport forward. We can't push it back, because we moved in this direction for a reason. So that's kind of the long answer to your short question. I don't love the playoffs, but I like it better than the full season and what we had, or how we had it. I will add this. I know I'm kind of being windy here, but the thing about the full season championship that a lot of people either don't know or don't remember is we awarded points very differently back here, because people want to say, oh, well, if we were going full season championship, Denny Hamlin would have a championship, or Joey Logano, or whoever. But we gave out, gosh, I'm trying to remember, because it's been 20 plus years, like 197 points a race or something like that. Just obscene amount of points that you can get in one race. The most you can get now is like 64. So just the whole way that we did things was completely different than it is now. It would not be the same. You would not even get the same result if you just went back to full season points and started rewarding points the way we do now. So people need to really understand that a lot has changed, not just the full season playoff, but how we award points, when we award points, who gets points, and how people race for those points changes. Because now we give a point for the fastest lap. So if you're, for instance, Kyle Larson at the Coke 600, he wrecked. He went out there and just did a qualifying lap and got his bonus point for having the fastest lap. Well, under the old point system, that wouldn't be a thing. So I don't know. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
There are people that are way smarter than me when it comes to the ins and outs of sports that are deciding these things. And not just NASCAR people. There's a whole committee of media people and former drivers like Mark Martin and current drivers like Denny Hamlin that are involved in this. And I know that they will come up with something that'll be good for the sport, because I trust most of the people that are involved in that process.
Yeah, I remember Heather growing up. For me, you used to get a bonus point for leading a lap. Used to get a bonus point for leading the most laps. So obviously, as you mentioned, it's changed. Heather Williams from WCYB Sports joining us here on Main Street Sports today. We have to ask, as we transition to Watkins Glen this weekend for some left and right turns up in New York. Obviously, a road course, so we would think SVG is going to make some noise potentially this weekend. Some other guys that you're potentially keeping your eye on. Obviously, this is one of those kind of wild card races here in NASCAR that could potentially get in victory lane this weekend.
Well, I think your list of others, those that can compete with SVG, has to start with Connor Zilisch. He actually beat him in the Xfinity Series race the last time we were on a road course, and is an incredibly talented road racer. So I think he's a guy you have to keep your eye on. I think Michael McDowell, who until he had some issues at, I believe it was one of the road courses, maybe Chicago, he was up there right there with SVG. He's an incredibly talented road racer as well. So I think that, those are the two people that are at the top of the list. Chris Buescher beat SVG in this race straight up last year. SVG had some issues, but Chris Buescher won the race. So I think that he's a guy. And this road course is different from the others in that this is far less technical. It's more speed. It's kind of like a super speedway of road courses. So guys don't necessarily have to be good road course racers to be good at Watkins Glen, because it's not so much hitting your marks and finding a rhythm. Like, you can quote unquote blow a corner a little bit and still be all right at Watkins Glen. So SVG is always the favorite when we're making left and right hand turns, but there are some other people that I think can compete with him here that probably couldn't compete with him at other places. And he may run away with it, but he may not. Like, particularly with Connor Zillage in the field, if he can qualify well. Now, that car doesn't qualify every week, so he'll be in the first qualifying group, and generally it's kind of difficult to get a good qualifying position in the first group or when you're starting points wise in the back of the field. But I think, if he can get himself in a position to where he's within distance of SVG, I think he can really challenge him.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him, Heather. Obviously, those two put on a show in Sonoma in the Xfinity race. So hopefully we get a taste of that this weekend as the NASCAR Cup Series heads out to Watkins Glen. That is Heather Williams of WCYB Sports. Kind enough to join us here on this Wild and Wacky Wednesday edition of Main Street Sports Today. Heather, thank you always for the time. Looking forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That is Heather Williams once again joining us here on this Wild and Wacky Wednesday edition of Main Street Sports Today. We're entering the final segment of today's show, and it's time for Calvin's favorite portion, where he gets and combs together the wildest and wackiest stories from across the globe and shares them with us for my, pleasure. Looking forward to seeing that. So stay tuned right here on Main Street Sports Today. We're entering the final segment next.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanata. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
There's a line that links us all. Most of the time, we don't even think about it. But it's everywhere. Illuminating our neighborhoods, empowering our businesses, and helping us to recharge. Whether it comes from our grids, the sun, or a kind heart, we believe in the power of good energy. And as your family and region continue to grow, you can trust that we'll always be there for you. Middle Tennessee Electric, bringing good energy.
Welcome back in. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Wrapping up today's show. Been a good show with a lot of content from college football with Joe Rexrode breaking down the Big Ten as we head into the college football season. Just got done with Heather Williams from East Tennessee as she broke down the MLB Speedway Classic this past weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway and talked a little NASCAR as William Byron picked up his second win of the season this past week in Iowa, and as they head to the twists and turns of Watkins Glen International Speedway this weekend in Watkins Glen, New York. Without further ado, it is time for our wildest and wacky segment of the week as Calvin walks us through that. So Calvin, I turn it over to you. I know you thoroughly gathered and researched the web for the wildest and the wackiest stories from across the globe. So without further ado, here you go, buddy.
Yeah, I've got some good ones lined up for us today, hopefully. We're going to start with this first one. Hot dog spill shuts down highway in Pennsylvania commuters' worst WURST nightmare. So this truck full of hot dogs flipped over on the interstate. It says 4 people required medical attention for non-life-threatening injuries, and they used a front-end loader to load all of these loose hot dogs into a dump truck.
So I guess my first comment and reaction is how many people stopped and took the hot dogs and loaded them up? That would be my first inclination if I saw free food that was like packaged and not destroyed on the side of the road. I know that's bad, but my first thought would be to take the free food.
Yeah, those the undamaged boxes were probably potentially a hot commodity, but I couldn't imagine that all the loose wieners they had out there were getting scooped up by a lot of people.
That's interesting. I've seen obviously big chunks of debris running down the interstate or the road. You see it all the time with a tire carcass, things of that nature. I don't know if I'm driving down the road before obviously the emergency vehicles and the police could get here, and I see a whole bunch of boxes, and as you kind of see on this picture, spread across the road. My first reaction, is it a stop? Is it a just keep going and drive to the side like this red car is doing here? That kind of makes me think a little bit, but to learn that it was a bunch of hot dogs just sitting on the road, that these construction workers and have caused this bumper to bumper traffic, to say the least, that's very wacky and wild in my mind.
Yeah, so it only gets wackier from here. We're going to move on to this next story. The headline reads, "Massive 22-inch rat removed from home in England." Mark, if we can put this picture up here, that is the biggest.
It's not a rat. It's not a rat. That's some other kind of creature.
It's got to be. That's got to be like a raccoon or something.
What was it eating on? And you said this was wild. Where was it located?
England, I think.
No, what part of the house? Where was it found?
Oh, I didn't get that far. It just says it was removed.
Okay. Keep going. It was removed from the house?
It just says it was removed from a home.
Okay, are we sure this is not somebody's pet? Like, it's not going to get that big, and it's not obviously hiding anywhere in your house feeding that big. I mean, good grief.
No, I don't think that thing's hiding anywhere and not getting noticed by somebody.
It's not small enough to hide. I would see that thing hiding anywhere. You talk to somebody that when they see spiders or a bug inside the house, I throw my shoe at it and stomp it. I don't know how I'll react if I just saw that thing sitting in my living room at some point. I'd probably run the other way and call for some help, obviously. But wow, that thing is massive. So I guess that they take cleanliness maybe over there differently across the pond than we do. I like to think that my house is obviously somewhat sanitary and clean and vacuumed. I don't know if we have vermin, I'll say, of that kind running around the house of that variety. So if you found one of those like that, I wonder how many other creatures that I still don't know if that's not a rat. I'll argue that to the end of time.
That thing's like Master Splinter from the Ninja Turtles.
I mean, goodness gracious.
That's huge.
How does that even get in? How does that even get in the house without you seeing it? I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, it started off small and then somehow it found your food. But goodness, like, that thing had to be living there for a while I don't know. I would need more context to the story, Calvin. But that's a big infestation right there.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump off the giant rat and we're gonna move to something that's kind of funny because no one ended up getting hurt. But the Seattle Kraken were out doing a content shoot and they were fishing in Alaska. And Mark, if we can pull up this screenshot, they had someone in the mascot costume and he ended up getting chased by this bear. Not like full on chased where it was like trying to attack him, but just enough to kind of give him a scare and make it to where the Kraken kind of had to move their content shoot a little bit more downriver.
You know what? I'm going to sympathize with the bear here. I mean, that is his home. That is his part of nature and wildlife. If I saw a creature, if I'm the bear like that, I would be trying to scare it off as well. Obviously, the Kraken are obviously trying to play to their base, being there in the Great Pacific Northwest. A open forestry out there as well. So they went up to Alaska to get this, as you kind of mentioned. But I can sympathize with the bear if I saw a creature like that. Maybe, trying to take my fish, my food, my dinner for the night, that I might try to scare it off. I don't know if it matters that the person was in a Kraken suit, but I guess it makes it funny nonetheless. I'm glad that, as you mentioned, nobody got hurt in the shooting of the production video, but it would make a nice blooper reel, to say the least, to see the person in the mascot costume potentially running away from a pretty good sized looking bear right there.
Yeah, whoever was in the costume is probably lucky that the people that were there with him did not see his reaction when he turned around and saw that bear running toward him.
Right. I can understand that. I mean, I applaud these not only NHL creative teams, but creative teams across the landscape of sports, right? Trying to shoot different content, and just kind of be creative and get people's ears and eyes perked. I mean, we saw what the Predators have done the last couple of years. Excuse me, sorry. The Titans have done the last couple of years with their NFL schedule release on Broadway, and the clicks in the eyes that's been on that with Broadway patrons trying to name the mascots of the Titans schedule. But they put themselves in a little danger here, nonetheless, going out into nature in a costume like that to get chased by a bear.
Yeah, but luckily everybody came out of that unscathed. This next one we're going to move on to is a little bit wacky, if you could say. I guess that's the point, but also kind of funny. A sea lion escaped from the ocean, and they found him wandering in the middle of the road in California. So they had the fire department and some EMS folks go out there and kind of guide this sea lion out of the road. And then I saw another picture when they got him out of the road. I guess he had been out of the ocean for a while, so they went and sat him in front of a sprinkler and kind of let the water hit him, kind of rehydrate him a little bit.
I think this is a feel-good story. I like this story. I think this is good for human nature. Unlike the bear, I would be very sympathetic in trying to help this. You said seal, correct?
Sea lion.
Sea lion, correct. Sorry. That's a great picture. That is humanitarian effort that deserves an award. He was a little dry, so they just tried to hose him off a little bit and get him back reacquainted to some water. I think this is a feel-good story. I think as a reporter, I love to write maybe on the story. I'm not volunteering. Hopefully it has already been written. But, if this happened in a Clarksville area, which it probably wouldn't, obviously, with no sea around us, but if we lived in the state of California, I'd write that story. That'd be a really feel-good story right there.
It says officers, firefighters, and community members use shields, a litter basket, and cardboard to safely corral and encourage the sea lion over to Point San Pedro Bay Park. So it was kind of a team effort to get this little guy out of the road and over to the sprinkler and eventually back into the ocean.
Full team effort. Obviously, that's sea lion made friends for life. Look at him. He's just chilling. He's just vibing. So props to all the people that got him back to where he needed to be. But I like that one. That one's one of the top ones on the list so far of the ones you've done the last 2 weeks. So bravo to you for finding that. And like I said, I'm gonna go Google that here after the end of the show and just read that news story that somebody wrote. I bet you could get a nice feature from maybe one of those police officers or the person who helped guide it back to where it needed to be.
Absolutely. And this next one is kind of up both of our alleys. This giant baseball that has been making its way around minor league parks across the country, it broke the world record for a number of signatures on a piece of sports memorabilia. Supposedly, it has 6,750 different signatures on this giant baseball.
Yeah, I think that's I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that one too. I think that's really cool. And my first, I guess, question is when is it coming to the mid-state and when can I put my signature on it? That seems like something that is a very unique idea. Obviously, this kid is getting to put his name on the top of the ball thanks to some assistance from probably dad right there. So that's really cool. Very unique as well, as I kind of mentioned. So I guess I feel kind of left out of this equation of, my love for baseball, working in it here. That I would like to put my signature, maybe right snap dab in the middle for all to see. And yeah, that's awesome. I don't consider that wild and wacky, but that's great. I'm glad you shared that for sure, for putting it in this segment. The wieners just abandoned on the highway, and that's wild and wacky. The last two have been really good though. Featurey stories.
It says the baseball's journey started June 24th at Victory Field, home of the Indianapolis Indians, and visited 15 ballparks before arriving at its final stop at the MLB flagship store in New York on Tuesday. So it doesn't appear that this ball will be making its appearance at First Horizon Park.
And that's my question: is Nashville's on maybe it has, but I feel like I would know. I would know, considering I semi worked there. I would know if it was at the ballpark. And why is Nashville not one of the destinations? Louisville and Indianapolis are not that far off the road. It could have went from Indianapolis to Louisville to Nashville. Boom, boom, boom. We're ready to go. David gets to put his signature on it, and we're good to go. So missed opportunity by whoever picked the destinations if Nashville was not on the list. Shame on you.
It says the previous record for number of signatures on a piece of sports memorabilia was 2,146. So this baseball beat the world record by about 4,500 signatures.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, but real quick before we get out of here, moving into our last Wild and Wacky story on Wild and Wacky Wednesday, kind of piggybacking off of our turtle story from last week. This one's a little bit more wacky. So this 5-foot water monitor lizard escaped from this person's home, and
is that a pet? It can't be no pet.
It's a pet.
That thing's huge.
This person had this pet illegally. The lizard escaped the home.
Makes sense.
And they chased it over 2 states. So they found it 2 states over after they finally caught it. It said it took a little over 2 weeks to catch it.
Okay, I want you to. Mark is doing a great job having this displayed. You can't zoom in, but you see the claws on that thing. The hands.
Huge. They're huge.
Why would I want this thing in my home as a pet? Like, no, I'm good on that. Hopefully, this person, as they chased this thing across state lines, ran into some legal trouble for having it. By the way, I think, wow, that's not a cute pet. I'm sorry. Look at the hands on that thing. I'll pass. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I bet him and the 22-inch rat would get along if they put those two in the same room.
Yeah, somebody's gonna end up dead out of that equation. I don't know which one though, considering the size of both those things. But hats tip to you, Calvin. Really nice work. Gathering. This isn't the same rat though. The other one was way bigger. But that's
another view of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is our 22-inch rat. That doesn't look as scary as the other picture.
Yeah. The other one, I don't know what kind of beast or vermin that was, but nonetheless, nice work.
I think the lizard could handle that thing.
Yeah, for sure. Nice work to Calvin. Gathering up the wildest and wackiest content here on Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today. That'll do it as we kind of wind down here, and I'll wait for that clock to hit 4 o'clock. Thank you guys for joining in. Some great content, obviously. Thanks to Joe REXRODE Athletic and Heather Williams, as always, for stopping by. It'll be myself and Mo Patton tomorrow on Throwback Thursday here on Main Street Sports Today. Thanks again for Calvin for joining us here today and helping out, as we look forward to being with you guys here every Wednesday for the foreseeable future here on Main Street Sports Today. Get down to First Horizon Park. It is winning Wednesday. Fans get to run the bases this afternoon at the Sounds to get it done. So I appreciate you being on board, Calvin.
It was good to do it. I'm looking forward to next week's episodes already.
All right. See y'all then. Have a good one, y'all.